Hello and welcome to Liverpool News Daily. I'm Tom Beattie and I'm here with Ben Boxer. We're going to be going through all the big headlines of today to do with Liverpool, obviously. And we're coming off the back of a great win last night, I think, for the Reds at the King Power Stadium, Ben.
Yeah, it was nice to see Liverpool get another 3 points and do it in style as well. I mean, obviously Champions League still seems a little bit far away. I think we need a couple of results to go our way, but it's looking good at the moment in terms of how we're going to finish the season and looking ahead to next season.
Definitely, and I think the blueprint was kind of there last night, wasn't it, in terms of, I think, what Klopp has been going for in the past sort of month. Particularly Trent and Curtis as well. Curtis Jones, he did really well. So it's great to see, a couple of players who've kind of come in for criticism earlier in the season, in some camps kind of, really kicking on now. So yeah, that's been fantastic to see. And I think there's a lot of positives to take from it, obviously. How do you fancy our chances, Ben, just of Champions League qualification?
Well, that's a tough question. I mean, I think right now, I still think it's unlikely. I don't think it's going to happen. I just think because both Newcastle and United play 2 home games, I can't see them dropping points in those home games. I think that they will have the support behind them, and United haven't really made it to the Champions League recently and done well, so their fans will want Champions League football, and obviously Newcastle haven't been there in a very long time, so their fans will be desperate for Champions League football as well. And I think just purely on that basis, I think it's unlikely, but you just never know. I mean, Brighton have done it against Arsenal away from home as well. Can they do it again? Maybe, who knows? And if they do get a result against Newcastle, then I'm starting to be a bit more optimistic and a bit more hopeful, because Newcastle still face Chelsea, and as disappointing, or well, not for us, but as poor as Chelsea have been this season, they can still always get a result.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's really kind of hotting up now. Obviously, the race for the top 4. But as we come into the end of the season, transfer rumours are flying around at this stage. And we kind of can predict at this point, obviously, that it's going to be a busy summer, regardless, I think, for Liverpool. But a couple of rumours to kind of go over this morning. Obviously, Alexis Mac Allister at Brighton. You mentioned Brighton just then. There's kind of been conflicting reports really about the midfielder. So obviously, there's been a lot of reports recently that he's possibly on his way to Anfield. But there was a report, I think yesterday, that possibly he's looking for a team that's qualified for the Champions League. So how do you kind of feel about that, Ben? Obviously, Klopp has been very open in the past about sort of not really wanting to bring in players who, that's a major factor for them. He'd rather them kind of pick the club and the coach over sort of, whether you've qualified for the Champions League. So how do you kind of feel about that?
I think it's something every player says, but I don't necessarily think they mean it when it comes to Liverpool. I think Liverpool, I'd understand if, we were at Tottenham, who doesn't look like it's gonna be back in the Champions League. But I think for Liverpool, given the history of the club, given the recent history of the club as well, how we've been to a lot of Champions League finals recently, I think given that, I think Liverpool comes with a caveat. So I think it's not necessarily every player will say they want to play in the Champions League, but I don't think it's going to be an obstacle for Liverpool, even when it comes to Mac Allister. I think players are smart enough to see that this was an off season for Liverpool. I mean, next season, even 5th place is probably going to be enough to get Champions League football in the new format in 2 seasons' time. So given all that, I think it's not going to be a challenge for Liverpool or an obstacle in that sense. I think every player would rather maybe play in the Europa League one season than I'm going to be bold here and say join Arsenal at the moment. I think right now Liverpool is still the more attractive prospect.
Yeah, I think just in terms of, like you say, the history of the club, and if we were to miss out on Champions League by a point or on goal difference, which is definitely possible at this stage, you think that possibly it overlooking sort of all those factors of what makes Liverpool attractive on that basis. I think that'd be a little bit, I think I could understand maybe Klopp even walking away from the deal, but I don't kind of think that'll be his mindset. To be fair, I think possibly that's just kind of speculation, like you say, and hopefully he'll have kind of a strong head on his shoulders and kind of see each case differently and see the kind of unique charms, if you like, of Liverpool Football Club. So, I still think that one, hopefully has a bit of legs behind it. So yeah, the second rumour that we've got on our list is Ajax's Edson Alvarez. I actually haven't seen that much of Alvarez, but it's a good job that we've got Ben here because he said before we went live that he's seen a little bit of him. So yeah, what do you kind of make with the links with him? Obviously, Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund look interested in him as well. So kind of what would be your sort of your lowdown on him?
I think he's the type of midfielder that Liverpool need.
Yeah.
Particularly since Jones has sort of come in and done really well. I think there's less of a need for an offensive midfielder and more of a need for the type of midfielder Alvarez is, which is he's a holding midfielder who's really comfortable in possession, breaks up play really nicely, reads the game well. I mean, he's a bit similar to Fabinho in that sense, and he's done really well in the Champions League for Ajax. He's done well against Liverpool. I think it really caught my eye in those games against Liverpool. And yeah, he's just all-round solid defensive midfielder who is a little bit versatile, can drop into play as a centre-back as well. And I think in that sense, I do think he would be a good fit for Liverpool, kind of the right age as well. I mean, obviously Chelsea were interested in him. That deal didn't quite happen last summer. He spent another season at Ajax, and it does feel like this is the time for him to move on. And it's a measure of his quality that the likes of Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich are interested in him. I mean, that tells you a little bit about him. That he's up there with some of the best sort of up and coming holding midfielders in world football at the moment, and I do think Liverpool would be smart to keep an eye on him as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one little seed of doubt, I think that's come in for me past couple of games, obviously, is Fabinho's kind of had a little bit of a revival in fortunes, and I think he played well last night, to be fair. So do you kind of think that Liverpool should still go kind of full steam ahead with a number 6 in mind, or do you think that might kind of plant a seed of doubt in Klopp's mind a little bit the past couple of games?
I think just because of Fabinho's age and the sort of decline that he had for a long part of the season, I agree with you. He has looked better and he has been sort of almost back to himself. I do think you might not even need an Alvarez type of player to come in, but you do need someone who can take some minutes from him and sort of lessen the load in a sense, because Liverpool has relied a lot on Fabinho very heavily. I mean, last season we rushed him back to the Champions League final when he wasn't fully fit because that's how much Liverpool needed him. And I do think it's just something that needs to be addressed regardless of how good he has been. I think you just need a holding midfielder in there or a ball winner who can play alongside Fabinho, but potentially even deputise for him as well.
I mean, he's played a lot of minutes, hasn't he? Certainly under Klopp, and that possibly caught up with him early on in the season. But yeah, he has improved recently, but possibly given that he's kind of had that little downturn this season. It might be an idea, like you say, to bring in someone to just lighten the load on him. So yeah, the final rumour we've got on our list is a player who I think possibly he's one who is a little bit overlooked at times, and I don't think, most supporters I don't think will have possibly heard of him. But it's Gabri Veiga of Celta Vigo. The interesting thing with him, Ben, is that when obviously you look at all the stats on him, he does really come out as someone who should be of interest to an elite club, really. He's done really well in the Liga this season, and he's that rare commodity of a goal scoring midfielder, isn't he? And I don't think there's been many better than him in La Liga this season. So, apparently the rumor anyway is that Real Madrid are now challenging for his signature. But they possibly might be looking to loan him out. So what would you kind of firstly feel about signing him permanently? And then obviously, secondly, would you be interested in taking him on loan? Possibly a kind of Martin Odegaard type situation where, it's with a view to possibly keeping him on at Liverpool and maybe even making it permanent?
I think the loan situation would be a bit strange for Liverpool to take him on loan. And, it's a bit different to Odegaard in the sense that Real Madrid will loan him with a view of playing him for the future. I think with Odegaard, it seemed like they were kind of loaning him out to pump up his price tag a little bit. It never seemed like he had the genuine, possibility of playing for Real Madrid. And I think the other thing that I wanted to say is he's a really talented player, but he does feel like someone who's just going to stay in Spain and go to one of the big clubs there, because a lot of Spanish players do tend to do that. And I mean, you don't blame them. There's two really big clubs there, plus Atletico Madrid as well. So I think as well, now that Liverpool doesn't really have that Spanish connection with Rafa Benitez, obviously we've seen less and less Spanish players in the academy, and I think it's one of those. I think Italy is a bit similar in that sense that Italian players don't necessarily haven't recently, not a lot of them have ventured out and even done well necessarily. They tend to stay in the league and play there. So I think with Veiga, that's probably going to be the outcome this summer. If he does decide to depart, I think he'll probably join one of the bigger clubs in Spain. But I do think he would fit in nicely at Liverpool, and if Liverpool can somehow convince him to not join Real Madrid or Barcelona, which is a difficult task to do for given that he is a Spanish player, and that will be his dream probably to play for one of those clubs. But if somehow Liverpool can convince him, and there is an appeal in coming to the Premier League, I don't know if at his age it's the right time. Maybe in a couple of years he might be more open to it. He's still relatively young. But like I say, if Liverpool can convince him, then he would be a good deal. And I think someone who could potentially bring in more value for money than Mason Mount, for example. I think he'd be available for cheaper. And I think he has a similar sort of quality.
Yeah, he does really stand out, doesn't he, in terms of his numbers? And that will be something, obviously, the club will be looking at. And, if there is a sniff that Real Madrid aren't 100% on him, or possibly Barcelona, like you say, possibly he could be a really good option for Liverpool. I know he's a player who comes up as a similar type of player to Bellingham on websites like FBref, for example. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. So yeah, I'll be keeping an eye on that one anyway. But yeah, I think that brings us to the end anyway today, Ben. Thanks for joining me. But yeah, that's pretty much it from me. If there's anything else you want to add.
That's about it for me as well.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.